So what's your daily work like? I think the film did a pretty nice job of giving you a little bit of a sense. Although the image there is mostly of the line workers. As an engineer, of course, you know that you'll work 6 days a week. And you'll probably work 12, 14 hours a day. If you're working hard and really putting in time, you'll probably get to work around 8 a.m. and you'll leave maybe at 10 p.m. Although if you're further along, maybe you'll leave earlier, say 7:30 in the evening. 6 days a week. When you get to work, you'll change clothes, you'll put on your uniform. Your uniform will have its little logo, your company logo, and maybe a button that shows today's motto on it. You'll have a meeting in the morning, and the film did a nice job of showing people finishing the morning meeting by collectively uttering the motto for the day. Before you get started, you'll go through a little exercise routine to piped-in music, and maybe once or twice more during the day, you'll take a break, everyone will stand up, and you exercise for a little while. And at least once a week, of course, you will expect to go out for drinking. What about your promotion? How will you enhance your position inside the organization? Well, and what constitutes your job evaluation? Will it be focused on your technical insight and the genius that you've brought to the job? Well, it's important that you are contributing, but the way that will be characterized is something along the lines that Hiroshi Honda gives us, which I quote as, well, he's working hard, he has a nice personality, and he's also well accepted by his peers. That constitutes an evaluation. The fact that you're working hard demonstrates a level of commitment. The fact that you have a nice personality indicates that you're not going to stand out as an individual. You're able to do the root building that is necessary in the Japanese context. And the fact that you're well accepted by your peers, doesn't just mean that you're kind of a nice guy or a nice woman. Rather, it means that you're fulfilling your obligation. To be accepted by your peers is, in a way, a technical judgment about the quality of your work. And how will you get promoted? Well, you get promoted with your class. The class gets promoted, roughly speaking. You're promoted as a group. Let's say you really bust your butt in order to come up with wonderful things, and you will be congratulated and well accepted by your peers, and then you'll be promoted with everybody else. This illustrates the extent to which age functions as a dimension of hierarchy across Japanese society, including in corporations. So the time in the job and literally your physical age is a measure of your status. So it would be inappropriate for some very young person to hold a very high status relative to an old person. This doesn't work. Again, this is something that's changing. What about your salary? It is expensive to live in Japan, but your salaries are, although changing some, although salaries are increasingly tied to some sort of productive output, relatively speaking, salaries are lower than in the United States. And you don't find founding companies developing new ideas as a vehicle for high salaries. It was widely reported, for example, during the 1980s, when a salary disparity, when Sony Incorporated took over Columbia Pictures and bought Columbia Pictures. At that point, the salary of the CEO of Columbia Pictures was, I think, several times higher than the salary of the CEO and co-founder of Sony, its parent organization. In the United States, that would be seen as just impossible. In this case, no problem. How about vacation time? Well, you allocate some vacation time, but you might not take it. It depends on whether or not the whole group is taking it. You don't want to stand out as an individual, after all. And indeed, in addition to not taking much vacation, you probably should work a fair amount of overtime, because everyone's working a lot of overtime, especially the leaders. The leaders must sacrifice to to demonstrate their commitment. And if you're one of the more junior engineers, you follow your leadership. Occasionally, the company will tell you that tonight there's no overtime, and it will be a scheduled. Let's say every Wednesday is no overtime night, and over the loudspeakers you'll hear at 4:45 the announcement, tonight is a no overtime night, everyone must go home at 5:15. Other than that, you expect to have a long working day. In part, the long working day is perceived as a means for maintaining strong bonds between members of this big corporate household. You stay together. Well, wait a minute. If you're working 6 12s, which is to say 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, or 6 14s, what about family? How does this work? I had a neighbor over this past year visiting from Japan. And the day before he and his family were leaving town to move back to Japan, I asked them a little bit about what was coming up next. And what they described is they were returning back to their home city, and they were going to get back into their regular home. And then my neighbor was going to leave. He was moving to a town about a 2-hour train ride away. In other words, the family was splitting up. The mother and the children were going to stay in the traditional, in their hometown, while the father, because he came to the United States and gained new experience, he was getting a promotion, he was moving to another division, he was going to be a big shot, split up from his family. You're working 6 days a week, you're not near your family. You leave early in the morning as a man, you will, it's before the children wake up. You get home at night, that's after the children are in bed. Or you'll get there late in the evening, just before they go to bed. You meet them on Sundays. You spend time with them on Sundays. This illustrates a sense in which there are sharp gender roles in Japan. And indeed, there are. The traditional images do specify sharply distinct gender roles for males and females. But it's not the same as in the United States. Talk some about the gender roles for males and females in the West, basically the strong male and the rational strong male and the emotional female. There's no image in Japan that women are somehow weak or unable to handle certain tasks by virtue of their gender. Rather, we have this sharp separation of tasks, of jobs. It is the case traditionally that men are working on these jobs outside the home, but women control everything with regard to the home. I mean, they not only taking care of the home, raising children and cooking meals and laundry and the like, but finding a home, buying a home, managing family finances. All this is traditionally in the province of women. So we have here two people, a husband and a wife, fulfilling their obligations by virtue of their position in the household. That can include the man moving away. And indeed, if his job, in a routine way, if his job is too far for a daily train commute, men will routinely go for the week and then come back Saturday night to be with his family on Sundays. So you will expect not to have a whole lot of family time working as an engineer. And finally, what will your attitude be towards hiring foreign engineers? Well, traditionally, there are relatively few engineers hired in a Japanese context. But increasingly, the Japanese are admitting foreign engineers into Japanese corporations. And this is part of a expanding Japanese commitment to internationalization. And I'll explain what that means here in a few minutes. I just want to very quickly address a question a stereotype that's often passed around the United States. And that is that Japan has way more engineers than the United States. Basically, with 1/2 of the population, Japan has twice as many engineers. In other words, they have more engineers by a factor of 4, and more engineers per capita by a factor of 4 in Japan than in the United States. Well, In order to assess this image and to assess this, what has become a stereotype in the United States, you need to think about how they're doing their counting. In the Japan case, basically what's being counted here are gijutsusha, or what people that are described by the label, gijutsusha. As gijutsushas, this is a category that is, first of all male. It includes technicians, and so this label for engineers in Japan includes technicians. It includes computer specialists. In other words, it includes people like Chikako Takashita, who was not trained as an engineer but became redefined as an engineer on the job. In other words, it's a very broad category. So the category for engineers in Japan is much more inclusive than in the United States. Secondly, because this category is more inclusive, fewer than in the United States have completed higher education. And now I'm drawing information from an article by Earl Kinmonth, who has spent a whole lot of time doing demographic analyses of Japanese and United States workers. In 1980, for example, only 60% of the people under this category had completed their higher education and had degrees, let's say, in engineering. In the United States, it turns out to be the case that corporate leaders are more likely to be engineers than in Japan. Well, and these, the numbers that Kinmonth gives us, 53% versus 23% in Japan. And he accounts for this in part by pointing out that in the United States, many engineers expect to become managers. We saw that in the corporate culture movement. While in the Japanese case, engineers expect first to find fulfillment as engineers, to fulfill their obligations as engineers. Kinmonth calls attention to this, the size of the defense industry in the United States versus Japan. As you know, the United States currently occupies Japan militarily. 1/5 of the engineers in the United States are put into or work in military arenas, and so are not contributing to, say, the economic competitiveness of the United States. So that's one important difference between the characterization of economic development in Japan and the United States. And the second is that in the United States, there's a significant tension between management and labor. I have a brother who works for Samsonite Corporation who reports the negotiations that take place between management and labor that involve trying to figure out better ways for the two to work together in ways that fulfill the interests of both. I think that's happening more in the United States. A common step involves the design of equipment that can somehow be idiot-proofed. In other words, the tension between management and labor carries over into both the design of new technologies and the organization of daily work. While the Japanese have traditionally been, the Japanese style involves much more of a commitment to incremental innovation. So all this provides Earl Kinmonth with the basis for the argument that, wait a minute, we can't account for productivity differences in Japan and the United States based upon the claim that they just have more engineers. And if we had more engineers, then somehow our productivity level would be the same as Japan.